Discover how discipline, focus, and intentional habits can transform your life, and if you focus on yourself for 6 months, you'll shock everyone. Stoic Glint. This video explores Stoic-inspired strategies to strengthen your mindset, eliminate distractions, and build lasting confidence through consistent action. Watch until the end to learn how small daily choices can create powerful results over time. Subscribe to the channel now to receive new Stoic insights and practical life lessons early. What if the life you want is not years away? What if it is only 6 focus months away, hidden behind the distractions you keep calling normal? Not 6 months of wishing, talking, posting, explaining, or starting over. 6 months of real focus. 6 months where you stop chasing attention and finally start building something that has weight, something that still matters when nobody is watching. 6 months where discipline becomes your lifestyle instead of a temporary mood. Where silence becomes more valuable than noise. Where action speaks so clearly that explanation becomes unnecessary. Most people never give themselves that kind of season. Not because they are incapable, and not because they lack talent, but because they refuse to release the habits that keep them trapped. They want to evolve while staying constantly visible. They want to improve while still checking who noticed, who reacted, who approved. They scroll while trying to focus. They compare while trying to grow. They keep feeding the very version of themselves they say they want to leave behind, and then they wonder why nothing truly changes. But you cannot build a new identity while reinforcing the old one every single day. That is not transformation. That is self-interruption. Real change requires separation. Separation from validation. Separation from comparison. Separation from the constant urge to prove that you are doing something important. Because the truth is, once the work becomes real, it no longer needs to be announced. If you can give yourself 6 months of intentional, uninterrupted focus, your entire internal world begins to reorganize. Your standards rise. Your habits become sharper. Your thinking gets cleaner. Your identity starts shifting in quiet, but undeniable ways. And when that happens, you do not need to tell people you are changing. They feel it. They see it. The results begin to speak before you do. Disappearing for a while is not weakness. It is strategy. It is often the smartest move a serious person can make. Because the biggest threat to your growth is not a lack of ability. It is the daily erosion of your attention. It is the notification that breaks your concentration. The message that pulls you off course. The random content you consume with no intention, one clip, one scroll, one distraction at a time. None of it feels dangerous in the moment. That is exactly why it is so dangerous. Because little by little, it trains your mind to live in fragments. And a fragmented mind cannot build a powerful life. Over time, your thinking becomes scattered. Your energy becomes divided. Your effort loses direction. Your progress becomes nearly invisible. Most people believe they are working on themselves, but in reality, they are splitting themselves apart. They start one thing, then reach for their phone. They sit down to think, then react to something meaningless. They make a plan, then get dragged back into noise before they have taken a real step. Sound familiar? That cycle repeats until entire weeks disappear, and nothing substantial has been built. This is the cost of fragmented attention. It always creates fragmented results. And fragmented results never compound into anything remarkable. You cannot rebuild your life while constantly consuming everyone else's. You cannot sharpen your mind while drowning in noise. You cannot create depth while living on the surface of endless stimulation. The version of you that you want to become, the stronger one, the calmer one, the more disciplined one, requires focus. And focus, if it is going to survive, must be protected. That means you have to become selective in a way most people are not. Selective about what enters your mind. Selective about who gets access to your time. Selective about where your energy is allowed to go. Right now, too many people give away their attention for free. They allow anything to interrupt them. They respond instantly. They stay available at all hours. Then they wonder why they feel stuck, mentally foggy, and strangely dissatisfied. But the truth is brutally simple. If everything can reach you, nothing meaningful can be built by you. There was a time when constant availability looked responsible. Answering quickly felt mature. Showing up everywhere felt productive. Reacting to everything felt like being engaged with life. But in reality, it was just a polished form of distraction. It looked like movement, but it produced no depth. The days felt full, but the results were empty. And that is one of the hardest lessons to accept. A busy life can still be an unbuilt life. Everything began to change only when the noise was reduced on purpose. Not forever. Not dramatically. Just strategically. Certain things were turned off. Certain inputs were limited. Certain doors were temporarily closed. At first, the silence felt strange, even uncomfortable. Without the constant flood of updates, messages, and stimulation, there was a kind of emptiness. But that emptiness turned out to be useful. Because silence created space. Space created clarity. And clarity created direction. Once the noise left, thinking returned. Real thinking. Not reacting. Not consuming. Not drifting. Thinking. Choosing. Building. And that is where the real 6 month begins. Not when you feel ready, but when you stop feeding distraction and start protecting the focus your future will be built on. And once the noise begins to fade, something powerful starts to return, your ability to truly think, not just react. When your mind is no longer flooded with constant noise, you begin to think again. Not react, but think. Not consume, but process. Not drift, but choose. There is a quiet difference between reacting to everything and choosing your direction. And once you feel that difference, it changes how you see your time. Disappearing from distraction does not mean abandoning your life. It means reclaiming it piece by piece. It means stepping back from constant performance and finally committing to building something real. Performance lives on the outside. It searches for attention. It waits for acknowledgement. It asks to be seen, noticed, validated. But building lives on the inside. Building is slower, quieter, and far less glamorous. It demands patience when results are not visible yet. It demands consistency when motivation fades. It asks you to continue working even when no one is clapping, even when nobody is watching. And here is the truth most people avoid. You cannot perform and build at the same intensity at the same time. If you are always showing what you are doing, you are rarely fully focused on doing it. If you are constantly reacting, constantly responding, constantly proving, then you are not fully creating. For the next 6 months, building must take priority over performing. Not occasionally, not when it feels convenient, but deliberately. This requires boundaries, real boundaries, not vague intentions or temporary promises. You decide when you are available and when you are not. You decide when you consume and when you create. You decide what deserves your attention and what does not. And sometimes, the biggest changes come from removing just a few major distractions that have quietly stolen your time for years. Think about it. Social media overuse, constant messaging, endless scrolling. These habits often feel harmless. They look small. They feel normal. But they are expensive in ways most people never calculate. They cost clarity. They cost depth. They cost momentum. Every time your attention is interrupted, your progress resets, like restarting a machine before it has time to build pressure. One reset does not seem serious, but dozens of resets every day? Over weeks and months, those tiny interruptions become massive delays. At first, your mind will resist this shift. It will feel uncomfortable. It will crave stimulation the way a body craves sugar after too many sweet habits. You will feel the urge to check something, just one message, just one notification, just one quick scroll to see what is happening elsewhere. That urge is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is proof that you have been conditioned to distraction. And like any conditioned habit, it weakens the moment you stop feeding it. Discipline during this stage is quiet. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is simply the refusal to react. The refusal to indulge every impulse. The refusal to trade long-term growth for short-term stimulation. Many people are afraid to disappear because they believe that if they are not visible, they will be forgotten. But constant visibility without growth is far more dangerous. It traps you in the same identity, repeating the same habits, becoming predictable even to yourself. When people always see the same version of you, they expect the same version of you. And expectations can become invisible cages. Disappearing, even briefly, gives you permission to change without pressure, to improve without commentary, to rebuild without interruption. It creates a protected space where transformation becomes possible. 6 months is enough time to change your body, your thinking, your skills, your confidence, but only if you reduce the noise that competes for your attention. You cannot build strength while constantly distracting yourself. You cannot develop focus while constantly breaking it. You cannot create momentum while constantly resetting your progress. The difference between staying the same and becoming unrecognizable is not effort alone. It is protected effort. Effort that is shielded from interruption. Effort that is sustained long enough to compound into something undeniable. While others are reacting to every notification, you are refining your direction. While they are consuming endless content, you are creating something that lasts. While they are distracted, you are deliberate. And this is not about isolation. It is not about removing yourself from life. It is about intention. You do not eliminate the world, you structure it. You create windows for communication. You create windows for consumption. But outside those windows, your focus is guarded. You protect your focus like it is your future, because it is. 6 months from now, no one will remember how fast you replied to messages. No one will celebrate how quickly you responded to notifications. But they will notice transformation. They will notice growth. They will notice discipline. And that transformation begins the moment you stop trying to be everywhere and start choosing exactly where you belong. 6 months sound short when spoken quickly. It passes easily in conversation. But when you look closely, 6 months is nearly 180 days. 180 opportunities to build, refine, and transform, if you protect the hours that shape them. And once you begin protecting your focus, the next truth becomes impossible to ignore. Time itself becomes your most powerful tool or your greatest loss. 180 days used with intention is more than enough to permanently change your direction. Not slightly. Not temporarily. Permanently. The real problem is not that people lack time. Everyone has time. The real problem is that most people do not truly own their time. They react to it. They drift through it. They let it slip away through small, unconscious decisions that feel harmless in the moment. And by the end of the day, they feel exhausted, busy, occupied, yet strangely unchanged. Because here is a hard truth. Being busy is not the same as making progress. Being occupied is not the same as moving forward. Right now, your life is not shaped by what you say your goals are. It is shaped by how you spend your hours. Every single hour either builds something meaningful, or it disappears without leaving anything behind. There is no neutral hour. Most people lose their time in ways that seem insignificant while they are happening, checking their phone, responding instantly to messages, consuming content without purpose, jumping between tasks again and again. Each action looks small. Each interruption feels harmless. But together, they quietly destroy depth. And depth is what creates real change. Not shallow effort. Not scattered attention. Depth. And depth only exists when time is protected like something valuable. If you truly want to shock everyone in 6 months, then you must reclaim your days, all 180 of them. That process begins with honesty. Not motivation, not ambition, honesty. Look at your average day without excuses. How much of your time is intentional, and how much of it is reactive? How many times do you interrupt yourself before finishing a task? How many times do you switch focus without realizing it? Every interruption resets your progress. Every switch drains your energy. And over weeks and months, these constant resets create a dangerous illusion. The illusion that you are trying, even when you are producing very little. It feels like effort. It feels like movement. But it leads nowhere. Fortunately, there is a simple shift that changes everything. You stop trying to control your entire day, and instead you protect specific hours. Just a few hours. 2 to 3 hours of undistracted focus every day. That alone is enough to change your trajectory. Think about the math for a moment. 2 hours per day for 180 days equals 360 hours of deep work. 3 hours per day equals over 500 hours. That is not small. That is not casual effort. That is the equivalent of months of focused practice. Months of building. Months of refining skills while others are still distracted. Most people never experience this level of depth, not because they lack ability, but because they never stay consistent in one direction long enough to see results. The difference between someone who remains the same and someone who transforms is not motivation. It is consistency applied to time. Many people wait until they feel ready before they act. But readiness is unreliable. Some mornings you feel motivated. Other mornings you feel tired, distracted, or uncertain. If your progress depends on how you feel, it will always be unstable. But when your time is structured, when your hours are decided in advance, action becomes automatic. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, "Should I do this today?" That question disappears because the decision has already been made. And that is where real progress begins. Structure removes hesitation. Structure removes doubt. Structure frees your mind to focus on execution instead of endless decisions. Your mornings, especially, hold enormous power. They set the tone for everything that follows. If the first action you take each morning is reaction, checking your phone, responding to messages, scrolling through updates, then control has already been handed away before the day even begins. But if your first action is creation, reading, training, planning, building, you immediately establish control over your time. You claim ownership over your day. And once you start the day with intention, it becomes easier to maintain that control as the hours pass. There was a point when everything felt stuck, not because opportunities were missing, but because time was being wasted without awareness. Evenings disappeared into passive habits. Scrolling, watching, reacting. It felt like rest, but it created no growth. It looked relaxing, but it produced nothing lasting. The shift did not come from dramatic change. It came from reclaiming just 2 hours each evening. Not perfectly, not aggressively, just consistently. At first, nothing looked different. The results were invisible. After a few weeks, there was a subtle change, more clarity, less confusion. After a few months, progress became noticeable. And after 6 months, the difference became undeniable. Not because of luck, not because of sudden talent, but because time, for the first time, was being used intentionally. Reclaiming 180 days also reduces something most people rarely think about: decision fatigue. Many people waste enormous energy asking themselves the same questions every day. Should I work now? Should I train today? Should I focus later? Those decisions slowly drain mental strength before the real work even begins. But when your schedule is clear, when your focus blocks are non-negotiable, you eliminate that waste. You no longer waste energy deciding what to do. You use that energy to actually do it. And that small shift, from deciding to doing, marks the beginning of serious progress. And once your time is structured and your focus hours are protected, the next step becomes clear, turning intention into consistent action. That decision about what to do with your time should already be made before the day even begins. When your schedule is clear, when your focus blocks are treated as non-negotiable, you no longer waste precious energy debating with yourself about what deserves your attention. Instead of overthinking, you move directly into action. The energy that once went into hesitation is now used for execution. And this is where many people misunderstand structure. Structure is not a prison. It is not restriction. It is freedom. Freedom from randomness. Freedom from confusion. Freedom from constantly wondering what comes next. You do not need to squeeze productivity into every minute of your day until you feel exhausted. That kind of pressure leads to burnout, not progress. What you truly need is to protect the minutes that actually matter. Protect your focus blocks like they are valuable assets. Protect your mornings like they set the direction of your future, because they do. Protect your time from unnecessary leaks that slowly drain your momentum. Remember this image. Small leaks sink large ships. Not massive holes, not sudden disasters, small, unnoticed leaks. And in the same way, small habits repeated daily determine your outcome far more than one dramatic effort ever could. Now imagine this clearly. Picture what happens if nothing changes. 6 months pass quietly. Your habits remain exactly the same. Your attention stays divided between distractions. Your time remains unstructured. When you look at your life after those 6 months, it looks almost identical to today. Maybe busier, maybe noisier, but not stronger. Not sharper. Not transformed. Now imagine the opposite path. 6 months of consistent, focused effort. 2 to 3 hours every single day directed toward one clear direction. No randomness. No scattered attention. Just repetition with intention. Over time, your skill improves. Your body begins to change. Your thinking becomes sharper. Your confidence grows because progress becomes visible. Your standards rise because you start expecting more from yourself. And slowly, The person you used to be begins to feel unfamiliar. The difference between these two outcomes is not time. Both versions lived through the same 180 days. The difference is how time was used. Time itself is neutral. It does not reward dreams. It does not reward potential. It rewards consistency. Quiet, repeated, intentional consistency. If you commit to protecting your 180 days, really protecting them, something powerful begins to happen internally. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries, and you begin to see yourself as someone who executes. And that shift in identity changes everything. Because once you believe that you follow through, your actions begin to match that belief. You move differently. You decide faster. You hesitate less. You trust yourself more. 6 months may not sound long when you say it quickly, but it is long enough to change your direction, if every day is used deliberately. Own your hours. Guard your focus. Remove what wastes your time, and repeat your priorities without negotiation. That is how 180 days stop being just another stretch of time and become a turning point, a dividing line between who you were and who you are becoming. And there is one place where this transformation becomes visible faster than anywhere else: your body. Your body is the most honest reflection of your discipline. It does not respond to intentions. It does not respond to promises. It responds only to repeated actions. Over time, it reveals exactly how you live, not how you say you live. You can talk about your goals all day. You can explain your plans to anyone who will listen. You can convince people that you are working on yourself. But your body cannot be faked. It carries the evidence of your habits, your standards, and your consistency. That is why rebuilding your life must begin here, not for appearance, not for approval, but for identity. Most people attempt to change their mindset while avoiding discomfort. They read books. They watch videos. They think deeply. But they stop short of pushing themselves physically. And without physical challenge, discipline remains theoretical, something you talk about, not something you live. Training your body is controlled adversity. It is choosing to stay when you want to quit. It is pushing forward when your muscles feel tired. It is repeating effort when the excitement is gone and only discipline remains. And this is not just about building strength or endurance. It is about proving something to yourself, again and again, that you can do difficult things consistently. Every completed workout becomes evidence. Evidence that you follow through on what you start. Evidence that you do not quit when discomfort appears. Evidence that you are capable of staying committed even when motivation fades. And that kind of evidence builds confidence faster than any motivational speech ever could. And once discipline begins to show itself in your daily actions, something deeper starts to take root. A new identity forms beneath the surface. When you truly commit to physical discipline, the change is not just visible on the outside. Something shifts internally. You stop seeing yourself as someone who merely tries, someone who hopes things will work out. Instead, you begin to see yourself as someone who executes, someone who follows through. And that shift is incredibly powerful because identity drives behavior. When your identity becomes aligned with discipline, your actions no longer feel forced. They begin to feel natural, almost automatic, as if effort has become part of who you are. You no longer have to convince yourself to train. You no longer have to argue with yourself about waking up early or getting started. Movement becomes part of your routine, not a negotiation. And as your body begins to change, something else changes with it. Your posture straightens. Your energy becomes steadier. Your presence becomes stronger. People notice it, even before you speak a single word. They sense the difference in how you carry yourself. There was a time when everything felt inconsistent. Goals were started with excitement, but abandoned too soon. Routines appeared for a few days, then disappeared just as quickly. Motivation came in waves, strong one moment and gone the next. Nothing seemed to hold long enough to create real results. But when physical training became non-negotiable, for days a week, no excuses, no endless thinking about whether to do it or not, something stabilized. At first, it was simply about showing up. Nothing more. Then, over time, it became about pushing a little harder. Eventually, it became something enjoyable, something expected. And slowly, that discipline began spreading into other areas of life. Work became more focused. Decisions became clearer. Reactions became calmer. Not because of a sudden breakthrough or a dramatic realization, but because discipline finally had a foundation to stand on. What many people do not realize is how deeply your physiology affects your psychology. When your body is weak, your tolerance for stress drops. Your focus shortens. Your energy becomes unpredictable, rising and falling without warning. But when your body grows stronger, your breathing steadies. Your thinking sharpens. Your endurance improves. And with that endurance comes resilience. Strength is not just about lifting heavier weights or running longer distances. True strength is the ability to remain composed under pressure. It is the ability to continue when things become difficult, to keep moving forward without collapsing at the first sign of resistance. And that ability is not imagined into existence, it is trained into existence through repetition. If you are serious about focusing on yourself for 6 months, then set a physical standard. Not perfection. Not extreme effort for a week followed by weeks of inactivity. But steady, repeated effort that continues without negotiation. 4 sessions per week are enough. You do not need extreme programs or complicated systems. What you need is reliability. You can lift weights. You can run. You can train using only your body weight. The specific method matters less than the consistency behind it. What matters most is that you show up, and that you complete the sessions again and again for 6 months. That adds up to more than 100 training sessions. More than 100 moments where you consciously chose effort instead of comfort. More than 100 decisions that quietly reshape the way you see yourself. And those moments do not just build muscle, they build identity. Another layer of physical discipline involves controlled discomfort. Choosing discomfort on purpose increases your tolerance for stress. Simple actions like cold showers, long walks without distractions, or pushing through fatigue during training, these are not punishments. They are forms of training. Every time you choose discomfort voluntarily, your capacity expands. Your limits stretch slightly further. And when real challenges eventually appear, they do not shock you. You have already practiced being uncomfortable. Most people avoid discomfort every single day, and that is why pressure overwhelms them when it arrives unexpectedly. But when you train discomfort regularly, pressure feels familiar rather than threatening. You learn how to stay steady even when conditions are not ideal. Physical discipline also strengthens emotional control in ways many people underestimate. When your body becomes trained, your nervous system stabilizes. Your reactions slow down. Your breathing deepens. And in that brief space between stimulus and response, something valuable appears: control. That space, even if it lasts only seconds, is where better decisions are made. People are not only surprised by visible physical changes, they are surprised by composure, by the way you walk into a room, by the way you respond calmly instead of reacting instantly. That kind of presence is not built through thinking alone. It is built through repeated physical effort, day after day, week after week. 6 months is enough time to change how you look. But more importantly, it is enough time to change how you feel inside your own body. You stand differently. You move differently. You think differently. Not because someone told you that you could, but because you have proof. Proof that you can endure discomfort. Proof that you can remain consistent. Proof that improvement is not just possible, but inevitable when effort is repeated long enough. And that proof removes doubt in a way nothing else can. Most people wait to feel confident before they act. But confidence is not the starting point. It is the result of repeated action. While others talk endlessly about change, planning it, imagining it, explaining it, you begin to embody it. And once your body becomes stronger and your discipline feels real, the next step is just as important: training your mind with the same level of intention. While others complain about feeling tired, drained, or unmotivated, you begin to build energy instead of waiting for it. While others avoid effort, hoping for comfort, you choose effort daily, step by step. And this journey is not about becoming obsessed with appearance or chasing perfection in the mirror. It is about becoming aligned with strength, strength in your routine, strength in your posture, and strength in your decisions. Because something powerful happens when your body grows stronger, your excuses start to weaken. The reasons you once used to delay, avoid, or quit slowly lose their power. And when excuses disappear, progress stops being uncertain, it becomes inevitable. But physical strength alone is not enough. Your mind is the true control center behind everything you build. It shapes the choices you make, filters the emotions you feel, and determines the standards you live by each day. Yet most people leave their minds completely unguarded. They allow random information to flood in without resistance. News updates, opinions, arguments, short-form content, endless stimulation, streams of information pouring in constantly. And strangely, many mistake this endless consumption for growth. But consumption alone is passive, and passive input produces shallow thinking. If you truly want to change your life in 6 months, you must upgrade the quality of your thinking, not occasionally, not when it feels convenient, but daily, deliberately, and without compromise. Real clarity does not come from collecting more information. It comes from filtering better, choosing carefully what deserves space in your mind. When the information you consume is chaotic, your thinking becomes chaotic too. Your decisions grow inconsistent. Your focus weakens. Without realizing it, you begin drifting from one distraction to another. Most people never stay with one idea long enough to truly understand it. They skim quickly, react instantly, and move on just as fast. And as a result, their thinking stays shallow, never deep enough to create meaningful change. Surface-level thinking produces average decisions, and average decisions create predictable, ordinary lives. If you want a different outcome, your thinking must become deeper, more structured, and more intentional. And this process begins with reducing mental noise. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every opinion holds value. Not every piece of content improves your life. You must become selective about what you allow into your mind, just as you are selective about how you spend your time. Limit shallow content that fills your mind without feeding it. Limit outrage-driven information designed to provoke reaction instead of understanding. Limit endless commentary that triggers emotion but adds no real value. This is not about ignoring reality or disconnecting from the world. It is about protecting your ability to think clearly. Because depth does not exist in chaos. Depth requires silence. It requires space. It requires uninterrupted time, moments where your mind is not being pulled in 10 different directions at once. Once the noise is reduced, something important must replace it: deliberate input. And one of the most powerful tools for this is reading, but not random reading, not scattered curiosity without direction. Targeted reading. Reading with intention. You choose subjects that align with the person you are becoming, skills that matter, psychology that sharpens awareness, strategy that improves decision-making, finance that builds understanding, philosophy that strengthens perspective. And you engage with these topics consistently. Even reading just 10 pages a day may seem small, almost insignificant. But over 6 months, those pages compound into multiple completed books. And what you gain is not just knowledge, it is a shift in perspective, a gradual reshaping of how you see the world. But reading alone is not enough. Information without reflection becomes clutter. It fills space without creating change. That is why reflection is essential. After reading or learning something new, pause and ask yourself simple yet powerful questions. What did I truly understand? How does this apply to my life? What action does this require from me? Reflection transforms information into insight. And insight is what changes behavior. Without reflection, you may consume endlessly while staying exactly the same. But with reflection, even small amounts of information can lead to meaningful transformation. Writing becomes another powerful tool in this process because it forces clarity. When you write, vague thoughts that once floated in your mind become visible. Confusion begins to take shape. Ideas become structured. And once something becomes visible, it can be examined, adjusted, and improved. And once your thoughts become clearer through reflection and writing, the next step is shaping the world around you, because your environment quietly shapes who you become. Most people believe they need better ideas to succeed, but often what they truly need is clearer thinking. Not more inspiration, not more motivation, just sharper awareness. Writing, even for just 10 minutes a day, can dramatically strengthen that awareness. But this is not about emotional venting or pouring out random thoughts. It is about intentional reflection, asking yourself simple but honest questions. What worked today? What wasted my time? What needs to improve over the next 6 months? These questions build self-knowledge. And self-knowledge builds control. Because once you understand your patterns, you can begin to change them. Another critical factor in upgrading your mind is your environment, especially your digital environment. Think about it carefully. Who do you listen to? What do you watch repeatedly? What conversations do you choose to engage in? All of these shape the way you think, often without you realizing it. If you constantly surround yourself with low standards, your own expectations will slowly drop to match them. But if you surround yourself with depth, discipline, and purpose, your standards naturally begin to rise. This does not mean isolating yourself from people or cutting yourself off from the world. It means curating influence with intention. You decide what repeatedly enters your mind, because repetition creates belief, and belief shapes action. Action, repeated long enough, builds identity. Over time, there is another important shift that begins to happen. You move from passive consumption to active creation. Instead of always watching others build, you begin building something of your own. Instead of only learning, you start applying what you learn. And this is where true understanding deepens. Creation reveals what consumption hides. When you attempt to explain something to others, you quickly discover the gaps in your understanding. When you attempt to build something yourself, you are forced to confront your weaknesses directly. And those weaknesses, rather than being obstacles, become pathways to improvement. 6 months of daily application creates a level of clarity that years of passive learning rarely produce. As your thinking improves, your reactions begin to change. You become less reactive to noise, less pulled into unnecessary arguments, less influenced by distractions that once stole your attention. Instead of reacting instantly, you begin to pause. You analyze. You respond with intention rather than emotion. This calm, structured thinking leads to better decisions, and better decisions naturally create better outcomes. Over time, this change becomes visible to others. Not because you speak more often, but because when you do speak, your words carry precision. Not because you react faster, but because your responses become thoughtful and clear. Many people believe upgrading the mind is about collecting endless information, but in reality, it is about improving the quality of your decisions. Better decisions about how you spend your time. Better decisions about where you apply your effort. Better decisions about what truly matters. If your decisions improve, even slightly, every day for 6 months, your direction changes completely. That is how transformation truly happens. Not through one dramatic breakthrough, but through the steady refinement of how you think each day. The mind you build in private determines the life you experience in public. If your thinking is scattered, your life will reflect that scattered nature. But if your thinking becomes disciplined, your life slowly organizes itself around that discipline. While others remain distracted by surface-level noise, you begin developing depth. While others react emotionally to every situation, you strengthen your reasoning. While others consume endlessly without direction, you build insight that compounds over time. 6 months of intentional mental development will not make you louder or more dramatic. Instead, it will make you sharper, calmer, more precise, more deliberate. And that difference is powerful. Because when your thinking becomes clear, your actions become focused. And when your actions become focused, your results become undeniable. Most people do not fail because they lack ambition or desire. They fail because they do not finish what they start. They begin with energy. They feel motivated in the beginning. They talk about what they are going to build, what they plan to achieve. But somewhere in the middle, something changes. Focus fades. Distractions appear. They move on to something new before finishing what they began. And over time, this pattern quietly destroys their confidence, not because they are incapable, but because they have unknowingly trained themselves to quit. And once your thinking becomes sharper and more disciplined, the next challenge is learning how to finish what you start, again and again, without quitting halfway. Every unfinished task leaves a mark, even if you pretend it does not. It creates a small crack in your self-trust. At first, those cracks seem harmless, barely noticeable. But over time, they add up. One unfinished goal here, one abandoned routine there, and slowly, you begin to doubt your own intentions. Finishing what you start is not just about productivity or getting things done. It becomes part of your identity. It is the clear line between someone who tries and someone who executes. And when you consistently follow through, something shifts deep inside. You begin to trust yourself again. Every completed action becomes proof. Proof that your words carry weight. Proof that you can stay committed when things get uncomfortable. Proof that you can endure the difficult middle where motivation fades and discipline must take over. And this kind of proof builds confidence that no external praise or validation could ever replace. Take a moment to think honestly about your past. How many things have you started over the years? Workouts, routines, plans, projects, courses, habits. Now ask yourself a harder question. How many of those did you truly finish? The gap between those two numbers is where your self-trust has slowly been leaking away. Because unfinished commitments do not disappear. They remain quietly in the background of your mind, reminding you that you did not follow through. Over time, this creates hesitation. You begin to doubt yourself before you even begin something new, because your past has shown a pattern of stopping too soon. And if you want to change your life in 6 months, that pattern must change. You must become someone who finishes. That begins by simplifying your focus. Do not chase 10 goals at once. Do not scatter your energy across too many directions. Choose fewer things, but commit to completing them fully. One physical goal. One primary skill. One structured habit. That is enough. Depth creates results, not variety. Most people walk away when the process becomes boring. They mistake boredom for a sign that something is wrong. But in truth, boredom is part of the journey. The beginning of anything new always feels exciting. Everything feels fresh. Motivation runs high. Progress appears fast. But then comes the middle, the stage most people underestimate. Repetition increases. Progress slows. Results become harder to see. And this is where most people quit. They assume something is broken. They search for something new. They restart from zero. And the cycle repeats endlessly. Yet the truth is simple. The middle is where growth actually happens. Skill is not built in excitement. Skill is built in repetition. There was a time when direction changed constantly. New ideas every few weeks, new plans every month. Always starting something, always feeling busy, but never seeing meaningful results. It looked productive from the outside, but nothing was ever completed. The real shift happened only when one direction was chosen, and switching was no longer allowed. No new plans. No endless distractions. Only refinement of what had already begun. The first weeks felt slow. The middle felt repetitive, almost dull. But staying with the process created depth. And by the end of 6 months, the difference became undeniable. Not because of talent, not because of luck, but because there was no quitting. Finishing also changes how you view effort itself. You stop expecting instant results. You stop chasing quick rewards. Instead, you begin respecting the process itself. You understand that real progress is earned through steady consistency, not bursts of intensity. Intensity can help you start something, but only consistency allows you to finish it. And finishing, again and again, is what creates real transformation. Another important shift is removing the habit of constantly restarting. Many people believe that starting over gives them a fresh beginning, but more often, it simply resets their progress. They return to the same level again and again because they never stayed long enough to break through. The rule becomes simple, but powerful. No new commitments until the current ones are complete. This rule forces focus. It forces discipline. It forces you to face the part of the process that is not exciting, the slow, repetitive middle where true strength is built. And completion creates something valuable, momentum. When you finish one thing, finishing the next becomes easier. Confidence grows because you now have evidence. You are no longer guessing whether you can succeed. You know you can, because you have already done it before. That certainty reduces hesitation. You begin acting faster. You commit more deeply. You recover more quickly when things go wrong. While others start multiple projects and abandon them halfway, you remain steady. While they chase new ideas, you refine what you have already begun. Over 6 months, this steady consistency creates a gap, one that becomes impossible to ignore. And after learning to finish what you start, the next challenge becomes even more important, learning to stay steady when emotions try to pull you off course. The difference is not that you worked harder in one single moment, but that you stayed committed longer than most people ever do. Finishing what you start is a quiet form of discipline. It does not attract applause in the moment. It does not feel exciting every day. In fact, many days it feels ordinary, repetitive, even unnoticed. But beneath the surface, it builds something powerful: reliability. It builds trust. It builds identity. And those qualities quietly shape the person you become. Over time, you transform into someone who follows through, someone who completes what they begin, someone who no longer leaves things unfinished. And that shift changes everything. Because when you begin to trust yourself, hesitation starts to disappear. And when hesitation disappears, your actions become faster and more confident. When you move with consistency, your progress begins to compound in ways that once seemed impossible. 6 months of finishing what you start is enough to rebuild your reputation with yourself. Not in words, not in promises, but in evidence. Not by talking about change. Not by endlessly planning what you will do, but by doing the work and finishing it, while others are still stuck at the starting line. That is where the real difference appears. You can protect your focus. You can structure your time. You can strengthen your body. You can sharpen your mind. You can learn to finish what you start. But if you cannot control your emotions, everything you build will eventually collapse when pressure arrives. Most people do not fail because they lack ability or intelligence. They fail because they react instead of respond. A single moment of frustration can break days of consistency. A single comparison can weaken confidence. A single emotional decision can undo weeks of disciplined effort. Emotional instability often works silently, but it is one of the fastest ways to destroy progress without warning. Emotional control does not mean suppressing your feelings or pretending they do not exist. It means understanding what you feel without allowing those feelings to control your behavior. When something triggers you, your natural instinct is to react immediately, to defend yourself, to respond quickly, to prove something. But every reaction has a cost. Every emotional spike drains your energy and pulls you further away from your direction. If you are serious about rebuilding yourself, you cannot afford to lose energy this way. You must become selective, not only with your time, but with your reactions. And the first step toward emotional control is awareness. Begin noticing what triggers you. What makes you impatient? What makes you defensive? What situations pull you into comparison with others? Most people live on autopilot, reacting before they even realize what they are feeling. But when you slow down, when you begin observing your emotional patterns, something powerful happens. You create space. And within that small space lies control. It may last only a few seconds, but those seconds are often enough to completely change your response. There is a simple practice that can change everything. Pause before you react. When something happens, resist the urge to respond instantly. Take a breath. Let the emotion settle. Then ask yourself a quiet question: is this worth my energy? Most of the time, it is not. Most arguments, opinions, and daily frustrations do not deserve your focus. But when you react instantly, you give them importance. You give them power over your direction. Over time, constant reactions drain your energy without you realizing it. Another important shift is learning to detach from validation. If your mood depends on praise, then criticism will easily break your confidence. If your motivation depends on recognition, then being ignored will stop your progress. That is why, during these 6 months of focusing on yourself, you must remove the need to be seen. You work quietly, without announcing every step. You improve without explaining yourself. You build without waiting for approval. This protects your emotional stability because your progress is no longer tied to external reactions. There may have been times when a single negative comment disrupted your entire day. One opinion, one comparison, one moment of doubt, and suddenly your focus disappeared. Not because the comment itself was powerful, but because you allowed it to become powerful. The real shift happens when you learn to detach, not by ignoring feedback completely, but by refusing to react immediately. Instead, you let feedback sit. You analyze it calmly. You decide what is useful and discard what is not. And that simple habit preserves your energy, protects your focus, and allows your progress to continue without interruption. And as you learn to control your reactions to the outside world, the next challenge becomes even more personal, learning to control the voice inside your own mind. Your internal dialogue is just as powerful as any external trigger you face. The way you speak to yourself quietly shapes how you see the world, how you interpret failure, and how you respond to pressure. Many people are far harsher with themselves than anyone else could ever be. One small mistake turns into a personal failure. One delay becomes proof that they are incapable. But this kind of thinking slowly destroys consistency from within. Emotional discipline does not mean ignoring mistakes. It means correcting yourself without attacking yourself. Instead of saying, "Everything is ruined," you begin to say, "This needs adjustment." Instead of saying, "I can't do this," you shift to, "This requires improvement." The words you repeat inside your mind create the reality you experience. Language shapes perception, and perception shapes action. Another powerful emotional drain is comparison. When you constantly measure yourself against others, your sense of time becomes distorted. You begin to feel behind, even when you are making progress. That feeling of being behind creates pressure. Pressure leads to rushing. Rushing leads to doubt. And doubt often leads to poor decisions. But when you measure yourself against your past self instead of someone else's results, progress becomes visible in a clearer way. 6 months is not about competing with anyone else's timeline. It is about evolving from who you were yesterday. That simple shift stabilizes your emotions and keeps your focus exactly where it belongs, on your own growth. Emotional resilience does not mean becoming emotionless or unaffected by setbacks. It means learning how quickly you recover when things go wrong. Because setbacks will happen. Frustration will appear. Plans will fail. Some days will not unfold the way you expected. The real question is not whether you will be affected. It is how long you allow yourself to stay affected. If one problem steals your focus for days, your progress slows dramatically. But if you process the situation quickly and return to action, your momentum stays alive. The speed of your recovery becomes the measure of your strength. There is also a simple rule that protects you from making major mistakes. Never make decisions in intense emotional states. When you are angry, do not decide. When you feel overly excited, do not commit. When discouragement fills your mind, do not quit. Give yourself time to stabilize first. Allow the emotion to settle. Then act with clarity. This small discipline protects you from choices that might create regret later. Over the course of 6 months, emotional control begins to show itself in visible ways. You become calmer, more composed, less reactive, more intentional in your responses. People notice this change, not because you speak louder or more often, but because the way you respond becomes steadier. You are no longer pulled into unnecessary conflict. You do not lose direction over small, temporary problems. You remain steady, and steadiness itself is rare. You train your body through physical effort. You train your mind through learning and reflection. And you train your emotions through pause and awareness. These 3 areas are deeply connected. Without emotional control, discipline remains fragile, easily broken under pressure. But with emotional control, discipline becomes stable, and stability allows progress to continue without interruption. If your goal is to shock everyone in 6 months, not with noise, but with undeniable results, then you must protect what you are building, even from yourself. Because most people are not stopped by outside obstacles. They are stopped by their own reactions. When your emotions no longer control your behavior, your standards begin to rise naturally. And when your standards rise, your life starts to follow in the same direction. By this point, if you have protected your focus, reclaimed your time, strengthened your body, sharpened your mind, finished what you started, and learned to control your emotions, there is one final layer that determines whether your transformation becomes visible to the world or remains hidden inside you. You must build a skill that produces value, something measurable, something the world can recognize and respond to. Because discipline without direction becomes wasted potential. Many people improve themselves mentally and physically, yet never turn that improvement into capability. And without capability, nothing truly changes in their external life. You do not need 10 different skills scattered across many directions. And once you understand that discipline must turn into real-world capability, the next step becomes clear, choosing one skill and committing to it with depth. You do not need 10 different skills pulling you in 10 different directions. You need one useful skill. One skill that can be applied in the real world. One skill that can grow steadily over time. It could be writing, coding, sales, design, marketing, communication, analysis, anything that aligns with your direction and purpose. But the real secret is not variety. It is depth. Most people remain at the surface. They learn a little, get curious about something new, switch directions, and start again. And because of that constant switching, they remain average in everything they touch. Depth is rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. 6 months of focused effort on one skill can move you further than years of scattered attention. In that time, you can go from beginner to competent, and from competent to competitive, if you remain consistent and actually apply what you learn. Because learning alone is never enough. You must create. If you learn writing, you write daily. If you learn coding, you build real projects. If you study sales, you practice real conversations. Application exposes the truth. It reveals the gaps in your understanding. And those gaps are not failures. They are instructions showing you exactly where improvement is needed. Passive learning feels comfortable. It feels safe. But it does not create skill. Active creation feels uncomfortable at first, sometimes frustrating, but it accelerates growth in ways comfort never can. Repetition builds confidence, not because you suddenly feel ready, but because you collect evidence that you can produce results again and again. There may come a period where progress feels invisible. Effort is being made, time is being invested, yet nothing seems to change on the surface. That stage can feel discouraging. But the real shift happens when your effort is directed into one single skill, consistently, every day. Small improvements, small repetitions, no announcements, no distractions. The first few months may feel slow, almost uneventful. Nothing obvious changes at first. But internally, understanding deepens. Skills sharpen quietly. And by the end of 6 months, the difference becomes visible, not because of luck, not because of sudden opportunity, but because competence has been built. Skill creates leverage, and leverage changes your options. When you build a valuable skill, your relationship with time itself begins to change. You stop wasting time casually because you begin to understand its true cost. Each hour becomes an investment rather than something to pass. Distractions begin to lose their appeal, not because they disappear, but because they no longer align with what you are building. Focus becomes easier, not because discipline becomes effortless, but because your direction becomes clear. And when direction is clear, decisions become simpler. But skill alone does not complete the transformation. There is another layer that determines whether your progress lasts. You must raise your standards. Because standards define identity. Goals are temporary. They are things you aim to achieve at a specific moment in time. But standards are the rules you live by every day. A goal says, I want to improve. A standard says, I do not accept staying the same. A goal depends on motivation. A standard removes negotiation. When your standards rise, your behavior begins to shift automatically. You create non-negotiable rules for yourself. You do not skip training because you feel tired. You do not break your focus blocks because distractions appear. You do not abandon what you start when it becomes difficult. You do not react emotionally when doing so would cost your progress. These are not one-time decisions. They are daily commitments. At first, this lifestyle may feel strict. It may feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it may even feel isolating. The old version of you will resist. It will search for excuses. It will suggest taking breaks when effort is required. It will try to return to comfort, because comfort is familiar. But comfort is also what kept you where you were. As your standards rise, your tolerance for wasted time begins to drop. You stop accepting low effort. You stop accepting inconsistency. Habits that once felt normal begin to feel uncomfortable. And this is where the real transformation begins. You are no longer trying to change. You have changed what you tolerate. And what you tolerate ultimately defines your results. Even your environment begins to shift along with you. Conversations that once captured your attention may no longer interest you. Habits that once felt natural begin to feel out of place. But this is not loss, it is alignment. You are moving toward a different standard, and not everything from your past will move with you. That is a natural part of growth. You do not need to explain it to others. You simply live it, day by day, over 6 months. And slowly, this creates a version of you that feels unfamiliar, but in the best possible way. You move differently. You think differently. You make decisions differently. Not because you forced dramatic change in one moment, but because you applied higher standards consistently over time. People may say you have changed, and they will be right. But the real difference is not how they see you. The real difference is how you see yourself. You no longer identify with the person who hesitates, delays, reacts impulsively, or constantly starts and stops. That version of you begins to feel distant, like something that no longer fits. And when your identity changes, your life follows naturally. Opportunities begin to align differently. Decisions become clearer. Your presence begins to carry weight, not because of words, but because it is backed by action. 6 months is enough. Enough to build a skill. Enough to raise your standards. Enough to become unrecognizable, not in a dramatic or loud way, but in a quiet, permanent way. While others continue talking about what they plan to do someday, you become the person who actually does it. And that difference does not need explanation. It is simply felt.